Hello, this is Jerry with Rocky Credit Union, and this is part 2 of our budget presentations on YouTube. The first part covered the basics of creating a budget, tracking your expenses and your income, especially the expenses, so that you can control where you're spending your money. This part's going to talk a little bit about some of the major areas that you end up spending money on on your expense side. There's 3 major areas: the essential expenses such as food, clothing, and shelter. Without those things, we can't survive. Then there is savings, investment, and debt pay down. And then finally the non-essential expenses, which we'll talk about in the next presentation. Non-essentials are the things that we don't have to have in order to survive. So for essential expenses, these are the essentials. We have to have them in order to live. There are fixed and variable. Fixed being things that don't change. They're pretty much set in stone. Mortgage and rent and so on. I mean, those can change over a long period of time. But generally speaking, you're paying the same mortgage or same rent every month. Same with car payments and insurance. Pay them every month or you can't drive your car. And student loans, same thing. You're paying those for a long, long time. Variable expenses, you can adjust the payments on variable expenses a little bit. Food, for example. Changing food from eating out, the expensive form of eating, to buying brand name items at a grocery store, to buying no name items at a grocery store. You actually have a fair bit of control over amount of food and how much you spend on food. Utilities such as phone, water, heat, electricity, those are things you do have some control over. They're not fixed exactly every month. Usually by reducing your usage, you can cut your costs there. I included prescriptions in the variable expenses because you can choose a lot of times between a brand name product and a no-name product in order to reduce that. But it's still an essential expense because, well, if you have diabetes, you need insulin. It's pretty much that straightforward. You still have to buy the stuff. So with your budget, you take your total income and you subtract your total fixed and variable essential expenses. These are things that you have to live. And what you end up with is your discretionary income. Now with your discretionary income, you can choose where it goes. Most people use it to do a lot of non-essentials. And what I'd like to try to point out is that with your discretionary income, you can do other things. And that's how controlling a budget and building a financial plan works, is that you're actually choosing where your money goes. If you don't have any discretionary income, that is, after you take your income and subtract your essential expenses, you've got a problem. Basically, you don't have enough money. And there's 2 choices. You can either increase your income, which usually means get another job or increase your hours or something like that. A little harder to control. Or you decrease your essential expenses. A cheaper home, smaller apartment, maybe even selling a vehicle if that's required. And then a few of the non-essentials, the things that people tend to include. TV, cell phone bills in a family of 3 or 4 can easily hit $200 a month. But with your discretionary income, you want to have discretionary income left so you can choose where things go. If you don't have it, you're going to have to make some adjustments. Now, once you've got your budget under control, your income is more than your expenses, you should be deciding on 3 main areas for that to go into before spending on non-essentials. Savings. Most financial professionals would recommend that you should have anywhere from 3 to 6 months of cash on hand to cover. By 3 to 6 months of cash, I mean enough cash to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. So your rent, your food, your heat, your phone, all those types of things. And you should have that so it's easy to grab in case of whether it's unemployment or an accident or whatever. Another area for your discretionary income to go into is investment. That's to build your own retirement fund, and we'll be talking about that more in another presentation. But also to build your children's education, and I'll mention that right now. There are a lot of people that say, well, I paid for my own school, my kids can pay for their own schooling. And I do agree with that. Children should be paying for their own post-secondary schooling as much as they can. The only thing is, what's changed over the years is in the last 15 years, the cost of tuition has actually risen at twice the rate of inflation. So what that means is any child that graduates with post-secondary education now compared to their income, their debt or the cost of their schooling is going to be a lot greater than it was for even when I graduated or for when most parents graduated. And so anything that can be done to help a child not leave school with that kind of debt will help them a lot in the long term. And the third option, but not the last, is the debt repayment, especially high interest. If you're paying for credit cards, especially store credit cards that can be 24, 26, 28%, or payday loans where they can be, with their fees, they're actually significantly higher than 30%. Get rid of those as much as you can. Pay them down, pay them off, and avoid using them. Anything that you borrow through that, or lease to own, rent to own furniture, for example. A lot of people do that as well. The costs associated with that are very large costs. If you can avoid doing those, you'll be much, much better off. Now, luxuries like new furniture, going on a trip, you should save up for those and pay for them in cash so you're not increasing your debt in order to buy those. If you don't have your savings, your emergency fund, your investment, or any debt repayment on track, you realistically should probably postpone buying the new furniture or going on the trip until you at least have your savings, investment, and debt repayment started. If you're adding on to your debt with trips or with other luxuries like furniture, without having your basics, your fundamentals of some savings and debt repayment and investment started at least, you're just building, digging a deeper hole for yourself, and you're not building a very strong financial future for yourself. So that's part 2 of our presentation, and I'll go into part 3 where I start talking more about the non-essential expenses.